Hello and welcome to another edition of Anderson County Conversation. I'm your host, Don Bell, and folks, we have got such a special show today, something that we've never done. We're really with Mr. Ted Young, and the local guy around here, and I would say that I'm an Elvis fan, but man, he's a real Elvis fan. He has got a museum here that we're going to talk about, that we're going to get to see. So right now, I'd like to introduce Mr. Ted Young. Thank you for coming.
Don, glad for you to have me,
I should
buddy.
say thank you for coming out to the museum, because normally we're doing it in a studio.
You're invited any time. It'd be hard to move all this stuff to a studio.
It exactly would. You know, Ted, we go back a long way. My granddaddy and your dad worked together at K25.
Exactly. Came here during the war.
And you did your full career at K25 and everything in the Oak Ridge area.
Yes,
but Ted, you're I believe a 1972 graduate of Oak Ridge High School. 71, okay.
71.
71. Avid Elvis person, even before he passed away and everything.
Absolutely.
Tell us how you really got in your early years and involved with Elvis Presley and what he kind of did to you. And probably I feel the same way, because I was a huge Elvis fan. My parents being from Corinth, Mississippi, 50 miles north of Tupelo, were Elvis, and then we came to Tennessee. But talk about your life and getting involved with Elvis, early years.
Well, basically, I grew up with his music, but I never had a record player, and whatever I heard was on the radio. And when I got to high school, I wanted one. And my mom said, when you get a job, you can earn the money, you can buy one. So when I got the record player, stereo, and after that, I started going back and trying to find the stuff that I'd listened to years before. And
now, was this maybe in junior high you got the record player?
No, it was high school.
It was high school,
It was
okay.
high school. So, and I was dying for one. That's the reason I got a job, and I was working at the Oak Ridge Hospital at that time.
You were, okay.
In the kitchen, and I was part-time, so... Once I got the record player, I was like a demon possessed after that. So I started going back buying stuff that was still out on the market that I could find that I'd remembered that I liked.
I guess you probably went up to the old music box, didn't you?
The music box?
And used to go in there and ask to play one and go in the little booth, and they'd turn it on if you wanted to buy it or not.
Right,
you know?
right. Gordon's Disco Tape. I picked them up anywhere.
You know, I kind of forgot about that place.
Yeah, yeah.
Right across over at French's Plaza. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The grandmother, I think it was the grandmother or the aunt that run the place, I'd get out of the car and she'd see me coming in the door and she'd tell me right then, we got a new Elvis release or we don't have a new one. So anyway.
That was mainly 45s or LPs?
A little both. Right on the start, I concentrated on LPs and later on got into the 45 singles and 45 RPM, as we say. So.
You know, we know Elvis performed twice in Knoxville, Tennessee. I believe in the early 70s. I know he performed in 77, not long before he passed away. But did you get to attend any one of those concerts?
I went to a show. Each of the three appearances he made, which was in 72, 74, and 1977. In fact, we just passed an anniversary date of May the 20th. That was the last show he did.
And that was Knoxville. Performed at
Stokely
Athletic Center, yeah.
First time he come here in 72, he did two performances, an afternoon and an evening, and sold out the Stokely completely. So I
saw through some research, Ted, that he I didn't know this, he performed at Middle Tennessee State University one time too down there, which was a pretty small college at that time. Somebody had to put up a lot of money to get him, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. You know. Yeah, Colonel Barker, he'd work a stiff deal.
I actually got to go to the 77. I've got some photographs from the 77 concert, which was just unbelievable for me, being a...
it was worth the price of a ticket just to watch him walk on stage. That crowd reaction, and I've sat through other concerts, big time groups. I ain't never heard anything like it.
And later on, I got to meet Charlie Hodge, and that was the one that gave him the scarves and performed a little. They were in the Army together, wasn't he? And everything. He took him with. He liked him, so he took him with him.
Yeah. Elvis always said he'd give him a job because he was too short to do anything else.
He was pretty short,
short.
Now, Elvis, I'm going to call you Elvis almost because you actually performed a little bit of, you would actually sing a little bit of Elvis, wouldn't you? Too?
Well, I did when I was in college. I was with we organized a band, and at the time where I went, you had to go to chapel 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And we'd book shows at the high schools and junior highs to get out of that. So I did a little bit. It was enjoyable.
Had a lot of good times.
Oh, yeah, back in, yeah.
Well, moving into your, when you got kind of started in memorabilia, was that before Elvis actually passed away?
Yes, at that time, I was just a fan. If I saw something I didn't have, I would, I was stumbling on the stuff all the time that I wasn't aware that was out there. And I had college buddies of mine and girlfriends and whatever. And they'd say, oh, my brother was a big fan. He's in the Army, and, I'll bring stuff back. And the more I saw, the more I got curious about it. And I thought, what's this? So you might hear somebody say they've got it all, but I mean, as much as I've got, I'm just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. It's unbelievable what's out there.
Well, Graceland in itself, I'm telling you, did they not, I know they had a lot in their archives, but from what I understand, they bought up a lot of stuff too, didn't they? Added to it, so to speak, didn't they?
They've had a lot of stuff donated to them. I think Angie Marchese, the archives director at Graceland, I think she said they've got about almost 2 million items in the archives. So, and that,
now, how does that work? Do they, as museums do, they store a lot of stuff and keep it stored, and then they bring new stuff out,
right,
put stuff up. So if you go visit ever so often, you'll actually may see a lot of different type, or the way maybe even the way they display it, right?
Exactly. Graceland's gone through a total metamorphosis here in the last few years. If you've been there in the last 3 or 4 years, you've seen the new state-of-the-art facilities. Before, as nice as those were, they're not there any longer. That's all been greenfield across the street, and they've really expanded their items and things that you can do.
Well, I was there in '98, and basically across the street were just shops and stuff, and they had the plane, Lisa Marie, and what was the other plane, the smaller plane?
Hound Dog One, they called it. Yeah, that was for the band.
It's still there, right?
Yes, okay. Those have not been moved.
Okay, but it's just totally different across the street, right?
Oh, yes. Well, the archive lady told me on the Graceland tour, up until they built these new facilities, she had 1,500 square feet to tell the story as you go through the home tour of Elvis getting drafted, going in the Army, coming out. She said over here, on the other side of the street, she's got about 20,000 square feet. So there's a big difference.
In Graceland, when I was there, you couldn't see, when you entered in, you looked over to the right, I believe, and you saw the living room and the grand piano sitting back. If you looked over to your left, you saw the kitchen table and all that was sitting over to your dining area. Yeah. Then you looked up the stairwell, and one went up. You couldn't go up the stairs, upstairs.
Still can.
And you could go down to the jungle room. I mean, it went down that back stairwell. But you couldn't see the kitchen was closed up. Now, tell us why that kitchen remained closed for a long time.
Well, Elvis provided in his will that the immediate family could live there until they passed on if they chose to. And he had a grandmother that lived quite a few years later, and she passed away. And then the last one that was in the house was his Aunt Delta. And after she passed away, a year or two later, they opened up the rest of the lower part. Now you can go through the kitchen area and the whole bit. But
okay, as you went out and you went down, you had to almost duck down. I didn't realize to go down. And you saw where, I guess, the jungle room, and what did they call where they had the 3 TVs set up? That was
like a rec room,
and
TV room.
And it was kind of neat at the time. Elvis was a lot like Nixon in this. He liked to watch three networks, so he had 3 TVs in a row, and they were, at the time, they were state of the art, wasn't they?
Oh, yeah. This was before cable, too.
Yeah.
So it was, you had the 3 major networks, and that was it. So.
And you go back upstairs, of course, and there was a big den out there as you walk out to the, what would they said Elvis liked that room a lot. He'd sit out and play his guitar and stuff in that room.
Right.
And if you haven't been down there, it is definitely a neat experience, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You're not... Well, I've been going for years, but it is, you can really see the essence of the person, of where he came from, what he achieved, and when you see all those gold records, that represents over 1 billion sales, not a million, 1 billion, it blows you away when you start thinking about it.
And then if you get curious, a lot of people like, as you get into the Elvis like you do, they may want to take a drive over to Audubon Road and see, after they moved out of the project area, he bought, that was his first house on Audubon, right?
Exactly.
And which was a nice one level type home, wasn't it, at that time?
Yeah, oh yeah, that was a very nice neighborhood. The problem of living there, though, the crowds got so big, people was staying outside, they was clogging up the traffic and all of that, and they had to keep a policeman out of there, and the neighbors got mad. And they actually they started a petition one time to buy him out. And it made him mad because his mother was hanging laundry on the line. And it was sort of an upper neighborhood, and he got ticked off about it. And he told the guy to go talk to the neighborhood, said he'd buy the neighborhood out. So that was, you know, but then after that, he realized that we was going to have to get somewhere different. So that's when he
And Graceland at that time, Ted, it was outside. You know, you go there now and you think, well, it's kind of the Memphis area. But at that time, it's pretty far outside of out there.
It was way out of the city limits. In fact, there wasn't nothing but a 2-lane highway, and none of that stuff that's there now was there. No subdivisions or nothing.
And the road before it was Elvis Presley Boulevard, what was it referred to at that time?
I think it was Highway 55 or 51. I'm not sure. I think 55.
And give us a little information on Graceland, because he purchased that, what, in the late 50s sometime? Or,
57.
57. So where did the name Graceland, and who lived there? Was it a doctor?
A doctor lived there. It had his last name was Toof, I believe, Toof, if I'm not mistaken. Had a daughter. Her name was Grace, and he just named it after her. It was built 1939, I believe. And when Presley got it, I think there's roughly 18,000 square feet in the main building, and then the other adjoining ones, it'd be more. But it's a lot bigger house than some people suspect. But you don't get to go through all of it.
Was he the second owner of it, or was there somebody else?
He might have been the third owner. I'm not sure, second or third.
Yeah.
So
you don't have any idea what he purchased it for at that particular
roughly
time?
$100,000.
And $100,000 was a tremendous amount at that time period, right?
Plus, sits on an estate of about 14 acres, roughly.
Yeah.
He had an opportunity to buy all that land out past that, but he wasn't interested in doing that.
Yeah.
I'm sure later he wished he had.
Sure. So Ted, let's take a person wants to travel, and there's so many Elvis fans worldwide, taking a trip down to Tupelo, Mississippi on Highway 45, and if you're leaving East Tennessee, you can take interstate and hit 45, go through Jackson, Tennessee, and bypass it all the way down, or you could go down through Alabama and come in that way.
Yeah, it's 2 or 3.
But tell us a little bit. I've been there and seen the Shotgun House, and when I first went, there was nothing but the house. But now, that park is really a neat place to see, and of course, there's Longhorn Elementary where he performed his first song, Old Shep.
Old Shep, yeah.
And Johnny's Drive-In, first little drive-in down there by it, where they've actually got the booth Elvis ate, and you get to sit in it if you want to.
Right.
But talk a little bit about going down to Tupelo and what that's like in the Kurt.
There was about a 30-year gap from the time I went right after he died in 78, and I didn't go again for 30-something years.
Really?
And then when I went back, I was knocked away by how much they had expanded, and Tupelo had grown a lot, and they were just starting to grasp the history of what they had there. And especially at the birthplace, they've really expanded on that. That is well worth the trip to go.
A lot of stuff there around it. They actually moved the old church.
Yeah,
it used to sit down at the kind of entrance of where you go up to it.
Right.
And Dr. Randy McCoy, a good friend of mine that used to be the superintendent of Oak Ridge Schools, and he's now he's in Tupelo and retired, but he took me through the tour about how they put it on a flatbed truck and moved it up there,
slow and steady,
slow, and kind of a museum up there, and
right.
done so many things. And another thing, you take a drive over to where Elvis performed at Tupelo, which was they called it the Alabama Mississippi Fairgrounds,
right,
and they got a city municipality over there, and they've got a statue. I know you saw that where he's holding the mic like. Just some great history there.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, Ted, I'm going to move into something, and we'll get to see it a little bit later as we go through and kind of look at your museum, which it certainly is. Ted, you last year had a good experience in Tupelo. You went down and purchased one of the earliest known signatures of Elvis Presley in a book that was used when he went to elementary school at another elementary that he transferred to.
Exactly.
Talk a bit about that experience and what the book, a little bit about the whole thing.
There was a guy his name's Bill Stallings from Gallatin, Tennessee, and he goes by Spa Guy on YouTube, and he does these history videos, and he was in Tupelo a few weeks before that doing a story, and he was walking through this cemetery, him and his aide, and this guy was walking around the cemetery there, 70-something-year-old retired Air Force guy, and he kept looking over and noticed they were all over that graveyard, and he thought they're probably looking for a family tombstone, and he said, I may know who it is. So he walked over to help them, and they got to talking, and finally, Billy told him that they was doing an Elvis video, and he said, you're interested in Elvis Presley stuff? And he said, yeah. And he said, I have this book. And Billy got to quizzing him on it, and one thing led to another, and he went and checked it out. Well, about a week later, he calls me up and says, this guy's wanting to sell this book. He said, you might want to go with me, just check it out. So we went to Memphis and shot a video, and then down to Tupelo and checked it out and listened to his story, and very nice gentleman. And we started doing our investigation, and a couple of days later, we both comparing notes, and there wasn't any doubt in my mind then, so I worked out a deal with him and purchased it. It's the earliest known autograph of Elvis Presley
outside of the Graceland estate.
If Graceland has one earlier, and they may very well have in the archives, but out in public, 1946.
That's really an unbelievable. He was how old at that period of time?
He was in the 6th grade going to the 7th, and he was just learning cursive, and we've had the signature checked, and we checked with the people that was in the other book. Everything matched up on the story.
The thing about it is it was a book that was issued to a person each year, and so there was previous people had that same book, and they would turn it in, and then they would issue it to someone else the next year. It wasn't a library book; it was basically a book that was issued and used. What was the name of the book, Ted?
It was a world history book. In fact, I have the autograph book, and then Billy Stallings, on investigating, he was able to obtain a book off of Amazon, which was the same original textbook. I can show you both of them.
Okay.
Now, the one that's got the signature, it's been through a
lot.
A lot, but you can see what it was.
And there was people that had the book after Elvis, right? That actually a couple of people.
Yeah, the guy that got it from Tupelo, Mr. Eddie West, was in the 6th grade, and he said Miss Campbell, his teacher, come through there with a rack of books or a cart of books, and said these books are going to be done away with. If anybody would like them, just raise your hand. And he raised his hand. This was 10 years later. And she was just going around the room passing the books out, just at random. And she laid one on his desk, and she told him, she said, I'm not sure, Eddie, but I think Elvis Presley had this book. Well, he said, I didn't know, that didn't mean a thing to me.
And what year was that?
That's 56.
Okay.
And he was just starting to explode on the scene, and he thought, I could tell by the way she said it, it meant something, but he said it didn't mean a thing to me, and it wasn't until later. But he kept that book all these
Had it
years.
how long, Ted?
Well, he'd had it from 56 on.
Up till now. Really,
Yeah.
till last year, I guess. Yeah.
Last May I bought
So
it.
you purchased it. Yeah.
Right. So-
And I guess to you, such an avid collector, that was a great find. I mean, an unbelievable find, really.
It took my vacation fund because I was planning a trip the next month, and that got changed in a hurry. So
Now, we're going to talk about another item.
Yeah.
We're going to see a lot a little later on, but we're going to talk about another item that you purchased. And you've had it a number of years, but you have got an authentic Elvis Presley shirt that Elvis actually wore.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about it and what year it's from and a little bit about it.
it's from I got it off a collector dealer down in Texas, and he obtained it through a relative, a second cousin relative there in Memphis that was a fan club president, and he had ended up with it, and that's who I obtained it from. So it was a casual wear shirt, has a monogrammed EP on it, and there was about a year and a half or 2 years where a lot of his casual wardrobe,
I saw that, yeah.
had sweaters and, with that on there. That was popular.
It compares
at that time.
me to, and you remember it too, Jackie Gleason wore a lot of that type of
Right.
shirt if you'd see him from his live show in Miami.
Right.
That was a very popular shirt in the late 50s, wasn't
That
it?
was a style statement at that time there for a few years on people, like sports jackets
Yeah.
or whatever. So anyway, I was lucky enough to
And we'll
obtain
get
it.
to see that.
Yes, sir.
Ted, like I said, you have got so many movie posters. Talk about a little bit about the different posters. And you don't just collect the American issued posters. You collect a lot of foreign posters that you couldn't even obtain here in our area.
Yeah, that's been an ongoing education. A good friend of mine up in Indiana, Steve Templeton, sort of an authority on the Elvis foreign stuff, and I learned a lot from him. And I'm not sure exactly, but representation, I've got about 15, 16 different countries represented here: Japan, England, Belgium, Romania, Turkey.
So Elvis was so popular that it was a worldwide. His movies were they dubbed in other foreign languages as they were shown through a.
I would say in some places they were. Now, they were instances, and I've got a few examples of these on the wall, of where the titles were different. Like, I'll give you an example, Viva Las Vegas, which was his biggest money-making USA
And
box
Margaret,
office.
yeah.
And Margaret. Over in Europe, it was Love in Las Vegas. So they got posters with different titles on them.
Now that's something I didn't know. They actually changed some titles a little
Yeah,
bit.
and did one Harem Scarum. It was U.S. and over in Europe, it was a Harem Holiday.
Really?
And I never have found out exactly why that worked that way, but they did do some changing.
I know I've got a couple of the posters myself, and I've got the Roustabout, which I got. The only thing, Ted don't never sell anything, but 20 years ago I talked him out of one. But I've got a Love Me Tender.
Yeah, you're one of two people that's ever talked me out of
One little item,
yeah.
all I got. I've got a lot of stuff, but nothing like he's got. But Ted, you told me years ago that the hardest poster, it necessarily wasn't the most popular movie, but I believe you said that the hardest one to find at that time and the highest was King Creole. Is that still true today? Is
they're out there. I will say this: when you're beating the bushes looking for this stuff, after eBay come out,
changed some things, didn't it?
and some and auction places started handling a lot of the stuff, that you got more of an expansion idea of what was out there. I'm still trying to find out how many was released from each movie through which studio, like the different sizes. Then that way, collectors will have an idea of what the value is of the rarity. So, but so far I've not been able to swing that. So
My favorite movie, and I know everybody's got, you like a lot of them. I've got, of course, the Roustabout. That's my second favorite movie. But Elvis was an avid comic book collector when he liked it, and some people say that he modeled his hairdo after Captain Marvel Jr.
There may be a sub.
And then he wore the lightning bolt, which was taking care of business.
Right.
And if you see the movie Wild in the Country, they say, you know this for a fact, they say, does he read comic books? You know, he can't be too bad or something. You remember that scene,
Yeah,
don't you?
yeah.
But, you know, I thought he did. The thing about Wild in the Country, and I want you to talk about it a little bit, it was a real dramatic role. It was much more of a dramatic role than a lot of his movies, right?
It was sort of, he was sort of a victim of his own success. When he come out of the Army, he wanted to expand his acting deal, and he really did not like singing in the movies. And so Colonel Parker worked it out where they did Blue Hawaii and another one, and then Elvis was wanting to do the acting part, so they did Flaming Star and Wild in the Country, which were great dramatic roles, and I thought he did very well in them. But they didn't quite make as much money at the box office, so people was geared up for the singing part, and from that point on, they stuck with that formula. But
what you're saying is that they were looking more at sales, but he was looking at more of, he wanted to really be an actor. Somebody said he really worked hard at being a good actor too.
Oh yeah, most of the people in the business that I've talked to, other film people, have said that he was vastly underused, but he was a money-making machine.
Yeah.
And that drives any business, is making money, whether you're selling cars or pharmaceuticals or whatever.
Whatever, yeah. You know, Ted, I've listened to some of your outtakes of when Elvis was practicing and getting a song right. I guess a lot of them were Studio B, RCA Studio B, he did some stuff, but Elvis wanted it to be just right. He might do 50 takes, right, to get a song.
Absolutely.
I mean, he'd just stop, wouldn't it?
Right.
Those takes that
Right.
he wanted it right.
Yeah, he was a perfection, and he knew in his mind it's something that was God-given. He knew what he was hearing and how he wanted it, and when he was able to orchestrate it, he got the sound he wanted. In 1970, he cut a version of, which was a monster hit at that time, Bridge Over Troubled Water. And a guy in the studio, when they got through, walked up to him and they said, "What made you want to do that song?" And Elvis, he said, "I wanted to let Art Garfunkel know how this thing's supposed to be sung." That's what it was more of a dramatic version, but and they said he wouldn't record a song unless he thought he could improve on it. So,
right. Now, he liked the song. Now, there's a song, and I heard George Klein tell the story. You know what I'm going to tell about.
Oh, green
Yeah,
grass.
he liked Tom Jones' Green, Green Grass of Home.
Right.
Tell that story about him coming through Arkansas.
If you've been on Sirius Radio, you've heard this. I've read about it before it was on the radio, but George Klein, a good friend of Elvis's, was working a radio station, and they're coming back through Arkansas, and they hear Tom Jones's version. And all of a sudden the phone rings, he gets a call, and it's one of Elvis's people saying, "Hey, Elvis loves that song, I want you to play it again." So George didn't say nothing. A couple minutes went by and he put it on again. Well, they get another phone call, and he gets about 3 or 4 of these calls. And they said, "Elvis wanting to hear it again." And George is saying, "I've got a playlist here I've got to go by." And then finally he just got on the radio and said, "Hey," said, "Elvis Presley's coming back from such and such." And he said, "He's loving this song." And he said, "I'm playing it."
So play it again.
Play it again, yeah.
And Klein said, "This Elvis wants to hear it again."
Yeah,
you know?
wants to hear it again. Then later on he cut his own version of it.
Now, Ted, here's what I hear, and you've said you've heard some more, but I hear that Elvis had 2 singers that he really, a female and a male singer.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard, and you can verify this because you know more about it than I do, but I heard that his favorite male singer was Roy Orbison.
As far as voice goes, absolutely.
And his favorite female singer was Anne Murray.
That's correct.
And that he really enjoyed, he really liked to listen to other people's songs, and he really didn't write songs himself, and he cut a ton of songs that other people did, didn't he?
He said that he didn't have he didn't have that ability. He said he probably couldn't write a song if his life depended on it. But he could take a song and that going on in his head, he could take that and mold it into what he wanted or project what he wanted.
When I first was listening years ago to a song that he recorded when, the one he did from Hawaii that was selling all over the world, the Aloha from Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
It was seen on satellite.
That's the largest.
Was that a live? Was that live or did they something? It wasn't exactly live, right? Tell me about that.
Well, it was done by satellite, and it was shown live in Europe and Asia, and the American audience didn't get the chance to see it till a few months later.
That's what I heard.
But it was the most watched TV show. Still, the record holds today. It was almost 1.2 billion people watched that performance.
His optic range on a song I told you about the other day, and I can't remember. You remember me talking about a song that I heard? I knew that it was unbelievable because what is the name of the song that I told you, was talking to you about the other day? The one that he's got such an optic range on. Well, very short song. It wasn't a very long song.
Well, there's different. There's ballads, then there's other type of dramatic finishes. His voice, if you go back from the 50s, you can tell how the voice improved as the career went on.
Sure did.
As far as tone's concerned, from about 60 to 67, I thought his tone was perfect. And then he got into more of the high voice stuff, but he could hit some high notes.
How many different groups did Elvis actually start out with? The Jordanaires, I know. Then he had the, was it the Sweet Sensations or what was the name of the? He had so many Imperials and different.
He always wanted a gospel quartet backing him up for the sound quality, and the Jordanaires did that for years, and then the Imperials. And then later on, live concerts and all, it was J.D. Sumner and the Stamps.
So, yeah. And then a little Kathy Westmoreland with that high voice was.
Right.
Name the group of people. I know that he had many people that were famous. He wanted people that were great to back him up. Name his band members, some of them. I know Ronnie Tuck was in there. And
Ronnie Tuck played drums. James Burton, guitar. John Wilkerson, rhythm guitar, I believe. Jerry Schiff was a bass player. And in fact, Jerry Schiff wasn't even an Elvis fan when he took the job. He thought, well, but as time went on, he thought, man, this guy's something else.
And he had the orchestra leader. What was Joe?
Joe Garciola Orchestra.
Yeah, he had a great orchestra backing him, and
right.
Of course, Stamp, J.D. Sumner, was that deep.
Oh yeah.
I got kind of tickled when they were doing it together, and Elvis was up there with him. You've seen that on, and Elvis come in with J.D. sitting there and got that deep. He told J.D. I can do it too. You saw that on that gospel video where he let J.D. know, hey, I can get there too.
Yeah, he couldn't get as low as J.D.
No,
but
he did pretty good.
Right.
Ted, I want you to talk about something. We're going to go into it, and we're going to look at a lot of things that you have here and see the museum that you've occurred over the years. But you had something that you did many years ago when you were going to Milligan College up in Johnson City. I want you to talk about actually meeting Elvis and how that happened.
You want the long version or the short version?
Well, just jump right in there and tell the folks about it.
Well, it started off as a college road trip, so to speak, and this guy from up north brought a car back after a break, and he was wanting to go to Nashville. And he caught me in between classes one day, and he said, you're from Tennessee, aren't you? And I said, yeah. And he said, you know anything about Nashville? And I said, I know a little bit. So we didn't have any classes, so we just took off, just spur of the moment. And got to Nashville and spent most of the day looking around. And then he brought up going to Memphis. And I told him, I said, I've never been further west than Dixon, Tennessee. I said, that's as far west, 40 miles the other side. That's as far west as I've ever been. So on a lark, we took off. And then that's how we got down there to Memphis, spent the night. Next day, went out to Graceland and hung around the gates, talked to his uncle.
What's an investor? Elvis Presley? Yeah.
Yeah, very, very country squire gentleman. Very informative, very friendly with the fans, and we stayed down there, and then the fella, he kept wanting to get closer. So,
now that's your buddy, right?
yeah, that's my buddy.
And what is his name, Ted?
I do not remember.
Because he wasn't there long, right?
He was not in school long. He left, and that's been 40-something years ago. But I do know he was from Pennsylvania, and we went around the side of the block, climbed a tree in the backyard, and
Just regular houses back there behind it, right?
Subdivision, and was taking pictures, and a lady hollered out the window, said, if I were you, said, I believe I'd get out of the tree. So we didn't want no trouble, so we got out. Well, I was done with it then.
Yeah.
And he wanted to go on. He said, let's go down and try another spot. So we ended up going down back on the back side, and there's a video about it. But anyway.
Yeah, we'll talk about how they can watch the reenactment.
Yeah. Anyway, we found a house that didn't have a dog, and but there was a dog house. So we turned the dog house up in the backyard, started taking pictures, and one thing led to another. Next thing I know, he goes over the fence, and I'm thinking, "Hey, you getting out of there?" And he said, "Come on."
The fence then, Ted, was only what, about 4.5 foot tall, or
it was taller than that.
Was it tall?
Yeah.
But now they've raised it. Now it's taller.
Yeah.
Okay.
They've added 2 feet to it or more. So I definitely couldn't get over it now. So anyway, we're in the backyard with a camera, and we just start working our way back through the back pastures there, taking pictures of horses. Had a pen of peacocks.
Really?
But, like the RCA pen, beautiful animal. And peacocks, horses, different vehicles.
Wasn't the office back there of his daddy's office too back here?
Yeah, after we got up past the what I call the open area and got
Vernon's
into
office was there, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. After we got into the backyards, that's when we got caught, and I'm over here looking around. My buddy's going through the trash cans, and he's looking for something. So. And then that's when we got caught. So.
Didn't you tell me, Ted, that you really think that they probably had y'all under surveillance, and they knew? You think they knew you was in there a long time before they come out on you?
From what I found out in the last 40 years, I think that somebody was watching us see what we were going to do. But
well, y'all were only like what, 28, 19, 20-year-old kids.
Yeah, I was a college sophomore,
Yeah.
so. Anyway, I was just wild enough to do anything.
So tell us about what happened next.
Well, we got caught, and I just stopped, and nobody really got mad. They just asked us what we were doing there. They handled it pretty good.
Yeah.
And a couple of people come up, and then one guy went in the house, and I guess a minute or two went by, and I'm thinking, I'm going to jail, and I knew my old man wasn't going to like that too well.
Jim Young wouldn't have liked that.
No, me especially 500 miles from where I'm supposed to be. So I'm petrified. And then the guy comes out, and right behind him, Elvis is walking, and I just freaked out. And my buddy there did too. We just sitting there open mouth, and he come up and asked us what our names was, where we was from. And
you didn't say Oak Ridge, did you?
No, I didn't. I wasn't.
Tell him what you said.
I told him I was from Pennsylvania. I don't know why. I didn't know what I was doing, and but he handled it. He made a comment about us being armed with a camera instead of a gun, and so he was.
And you didn't ask for an autograph or a picture or nothing?
Well, if I'd have had film in the camera, we'd have got a picture.
You'd already taken all your.
And I don't know to this day. I cannot remember if the camera belonged to me or the friend of mine, but we had already shot a roll of film and of everything else.
Well, tell them what Elvis told you when you left. I thought you told me that.
Oh, he said next time you come to visit, said do like decent folks, come to the front door.
Knock, just
yeah,
like
knock
you could
on the
do
front,
it. Right,
yeah, like you could just walk in there,
Now, what happened after that? How'd you get back down?
Just they took care of us as far as they called down at the gate, and they sent the Jeep up and the vehicle, and we rode down to the gate.
Vestra take you back down? Or did he?
Yeah.
They gave you a little something, didn't you, for that?
Yeah, we got out, and I was freaking out, and I guess he walked over to the guard place there, and he come out, he said, would you guys like a poster? And he gave us poster, but I was still, wasn't until later that I opened it up, and I've got it over there on the wall.
You were a little bit.
Oh, I
bet you
scared
shook
death.
up, wasn't
Oh,
you?
I scared death. Yeah.
But
yeah.
but Elvis was he was really nice to you, wasn't he? I mean, really, he was.
That sealed the deal. I'd already seen him. That was yeah. He could have thrown us, just get him out there or whatever.
Yeah.
But he was very very good with the fans. In fact, he told his people never to get rough with them. Said those are the people that put me up here on this hill. So.
Well, Ted, we've talked a little bit about Grayson. We talked a little about your collection. I think it's time now that we actually go around and take a look at some of your beautiful museum that you have here. I want to mention one thing. If you would like to see the reenactment of the Ted's jumping the fence, they can go to, what is that, on YouTube and see that.
YouTube, the Spa Guy, and it's listed as fence jumper. And there's a picture that was used that we took that morning of Uncle Vester. He's posing in front of the gates for a picture. So if you want to see the reenactment of it, that's the one to go see.
Well, we're going to take a look, and we'll be right back in just a minute and take a look at all this, Ted.
Okay.
Ted, we're right here now. We're looking at the one of your really rare purchase. Folks, this is a actual shirt that Elvis Presley wore. Talk about this, Ted, a little bit.
Basically just a casual wear shirt. This EP was used on some of his styles, like V-neck sweaters and stuff and jackets in the late 50s. And it was one of those things that was in style and then it went out of style. And I think you mentioned Jackie Gleason used to have them like that monogram. So a second cousin of his got this, and it ended up in the hands of a fan club president in Memphis, and that's who I got it from a few years later, about 1980.
Very rare item right there. I noticed Elvis was looked like maybe even a small or a medium. He didn't wear too.
That was before he went in the Army, I believe. After that,
yeah.
But
well, we're looking at some posters, Ted, and we're talking about just a minute ago. You got some albums, but you, I don't know what you call the big one, because that's not a one sheet. What do you call
that? That is a banner. Those were put out and hung in the movie lobbies of the bigger theaters.
What is the one in Memphis? You said that the big one down in Memphis, Tennessee.
Orpheum. That's the Orpheum Theater.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that goes with this one sheet over here, Jailhouse Rock.
That was one of his early pictures too, wasn't it?
That's a very hard poster to find.
And what do you call the one that we're looking at behind there? Is that a foreign, or is that a?
That is from France. That is a Viva Las Vegas from France. That's a 47 by 63. The Europeans, their dimensions, USA stuff is pretty well uniform. Over there, Italy has a certain size, and but this is 47 by 63, I believe.
Okay, we're holding this, Ted. This is really what started all right here. The first album you purchased, right?
It was for me, yeah. Once I got a record player, this was the one.
This is it. This is the one.
And I bought the record in '68 or '69, but actually I saw the movie in '64. So, but I remember liking the songs, and I thought,
this what started the whole thing, didn't it? Right here.
Like an alcoholic, one drink, yeah.
And Ted, we were talking about this poster back here. Talk a little bit about this one right here.
This is a promotional poster. It's referred to among collectors as the white poster. A lot of collectors don't even know about it. Colonel Parker had these put out just for publicity interviews and stuff for Jailhouse Rock before it come out. And there's not many of these that's ever been found. And that one's I lucked out very good on the condition. It's an excellent condition. And I was telling about buying it. I ended up buying not only the poster, but I have the printing blocks that it was used to make the poster.
They can't replicate it.
They can't replicate it in the same way, no.
You might digitally do it today, but that'd be the only way,
yeah.
But then right here, I think we can talk about, this was a foreign poster, right?
Yes, that's from Japan. And most of their one sheets are 20 by 29 inches, and you can tell it's not American language on there. So that's from the movie, '62 movie, Follow That Dream.
You got that right there on a little Sparta,
Right.
English right there.
Each country has their own way of promoting stuff.
Now
so.
this one's unique too, in the fact that I've never seen really Elvis look like that. Where's that one out of?
That one is the movie Roustabout, which you have the USA version, and that's the German version of it,
Okay.
or one of them. Yeah.
Ted, well, now we're standing in front of my favorite movie, that Wild in the Country. That's original one sheet. What year's that from?
That's from 1962. That's USA version, one sheet.
That is a beautiful poster, and of course, Love Me Tender, his first movie.
Yes.
Deborah Paget in there. That's one where his mother cried. They went to see the movie, didn't she? Because he gets killed in that movie.
Killed at the end, yeah.
And she took it pretty hard,
Right.
from what I understand.
Now that movie was supposed to be named the Reno Brothers on the original script, but the record was such a hit, they just changed it and entered the song into the movie. So
Yeah.
that was his first one. So
Now they made this in two versions, right? This is a painted cover, and then they made a photographic cover of that same one. Well, we'll move on around, Ted, and I'm looking at a movie that I have seen many times called Loving You.
right,
That's one that guy walks up and calls him Sideburns.
right,
Okay, let's hear a song, Sideburns, or something like that,
right. It was the closest movie to his actual life.
It really was.
At that time.
He said something about, now let's see what you can do, or something, didn't he? How did he say that,
Yeah,
Ted?
pretty much like that.
You
yeah.
know, and they getting a big fight in there,
Yeah.
on that one. I really like
Now
that movie.
the guy he got in a fight with, he whipped him a couple other times in movies. If you watch GI Blues, there's a barroom scene where the fight breaks out.
Same thing.
Same guy.
Same guy.
Yeah.
Ted, we're moving around to more movie posters here, but that's another one where he comes back from the service, and he don't even go home and see his mother on that. And
Right.
as you know, he goes out with his friends and has a good time with his girlfriend riding that, was it Austin Healy or MG? I know.
I think it was an MG, but I'm not really sure. But I think it was an MG. But
That's another movie I really like.
see, that's something else. You mentioned up the military. After he got out of the Army, there was 3 or 4 movies right there in a row where he was always either in the Army or getting out of the Army. They utilized that.
I believe that was the one, if I'm not mistaken, Angela Lansbury played his mother, and she wasn't much older than his mother.
Right.
And she pulled it off really good.
Pulled it off
I
very
got
good.
tickled at she made, she was in there and said, "Oh, my boy's coming home from the war," and and his husband looks at us and says, "Mama, there wasn't no war," like And that was another good. That's one of your favorite too. Do you like that?
Oh, I like them. I like them all.
You like them all,
Up to 64, they had a different quality, and then after that, they realized they could make money off of them regardless, so they started cutting the budgets, but the money was still rolling in. So never made a motion picture that lost money.
Now, folks, right here is one of your prized possessions. This is the book that one of the earliest known signatures of Elvis Presley. Talk just a little bit about where that book actually, the school he was at, and where he signed it at there.
Well, the signature is right here at the bottom, and this was in the 6th grade. He just started learning cursive writing, and and then right above that, there's a lady, her name was Smith, I believe, and he's also written in the margins that he likes her sister. Before we purchased this book, we tracked some of these people down, and we went to her room at a assisted living, and as soon as we handed her the book, she knew exactly what it was. So
he liked the sister.
He liked the sister, and we tried to get a hold of her, and her sister was living in Houston, Texas, and she said, well, she still lives in Tupelo. And me and Bill said, where? And said, she's in an assisted living, so we went over there. We spent about 2 days tracking this down through cemeteries and meeting with these people.
And you went to the graveside of this teacher too, didn't you?
Miss Campbell, and talked to one. We were in the process of trying to talk to one of her sons who was also in a nursing home, but we didn't make a connection there.
Now at that time, was it called Tupelo Junior High School, right?
Right.
And what was the name of the school after that? They
Milan.
changed Milan. Yeah.
Milan.
Now, folks, this is what the book would look like. Hold that cover up, Ted, and we'll show them the difference.
Yeah.
Now this
This is what the
the
original.
original looked like. This is and then that's what the one where Elvis signed.
This
that
has been
Ted's
through
holding.
the school
Yep.
system. It's beat up pretty bad, but.
Now, Ted, what is this right here we're looking at?
That's a facsimile of his report card for that year, going into the 7th grade when this was signed.
Now he left here. He only went here a very short time because they moved to Memphis, right?
1948, they left.
Just right after this, they moved on to
Right.
Memphis because he went to Lawhorn Elementary,
Right.
and then he went to this school for like a year or so, didn't he?
Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, that's a report card, and they do things different now than back then as far as the ratings. It's so.
It's pretty neat.
I thought that was just something.
It is to go along with the books and
Right.
everything, showing the, like I said, having the earliest known signature outside of Graceland. That's pretty neat, you know.
I was trying to get a photograph of the teacher, Miss Campbell, and but I haven't been able to obtain that yet. When he was on the set of Love Me Tender, this guy right here is the one that manufactured that. He shows up, and Elvis is laying his stuff on the hood of a car. And he looks at the guy and he said, "Are you sure we can sell?" He said, "You sure you can sell this stuff?" And anyway, the guy sent him a receipt. I bought this at an auction here about a year ago.
That is really neat, Ted.
And this is a department store in Louisville, Kentucky. And everything in there is Elvis Presley item stuff. I mean, boys, girls, shoes, pumps, tennis shoes.
I've never seen that photograph right there. That's a theater photograph.
I don't know where that theater's at, but that's exactly what it is. But I thought this was unique. That guy shows up on the set, and he's laying this stuff out on the hood of the car, and he's like, "What in the devil?"
Now these right up here, we're looking at Yvonne Craig. She was in some. I see her.
Right.
Who is name some of the people these are right here?
Cynthia Pepper starred with him and co-starred with him in Kissing Cousins. There's your guy, Joe Gershiola.
Conductor, yeah.
Yeah, and Jeremy Slate, who had a long career in Hollywood on TV and movies. He was in a bunch of movies, but the one that jumps off my head, if you ever saw the John Wayne movie, Sons of Katie Elder, he had a big role in that.
Who's the two girls in? You're looking in the car right there with the.
Well, that's from an opening scene of Happened at the World's Fair, and this is Gary Lockwood, his co-star, who you should remember from Wild in the Country. He co-starred in 2 movies, and I met him down there a couple of years ago. These people can tell you stuff that you're not going to find in a book.
No.
And things, band members, just different. Here's when Muhammad Ali come to his hotel suite in
That's
Vegas.
like they're boxing a little bit
Yeah.
right there, don't they?
Yeah, they was.
Is that a Muhammad Ali signature on that?
Yeah, it's a print.
Print,
This
okay.
is a print, but it's the photos are unique. Elvis had a robe made for him called the People's Choice, or the People's. It's supposed to have been the People's Champion, and they messed it up, and it was People's Choice. And he wore it before the first fight he ever lost, and he wouldn't wear it again. But it's in his museum up in Louisville, Kentucky.
You know, we didn't talk about that, but he was pretty good in it. He took a lot of karate, Elvis, didn't he? He was good, pretty good at it.
Eighth degree black belt.
He really was.
Eighth degree black
Took
belt.
it serious.
Oh, yeah,
serious.
very serious. If you watched his concerts, especially from the early 70s on, I mean, they were physically demanding.
Yeah. Ted got a nice selection of magazines here, too.
Yes, sir. These are originals they date back from 1954 right on up. Now over on the other side of the room, I've got about 1,100 boxed up, and these are the vintage, as far as condition. Here's one of Elvis and the Beatles. This was the first cover in the U.S. that ever had both of them on the same cover, and these are in mint condition. I mean,
Love Me Tender right here, I believe,
Right.
or the guitar and everything.
right?
So they go back to the 50s.
Oh,
don't
yeah.
they? Yeah.
54, 55, 6, right on up through. I put these out because he more or less dominated the cover, so it's sort of something to jump out at you.
Really a nice collection of magazines. Have they gone up in value over the years, Ted?
Some have, some. Right now, we're going through a stage where everything is computer, the written word, and it's changed a little bit, but historically, they're not making any more of these. In the long run, they definitely will retain their value.
Boy, Ted, you have got one heck of a collection of posters is the main thing, the one sheet. But you've got the King Creole over here, and then you've got another King Creole right here. Tell us about the difference in them.
This one here was the original one that was put out when the movie was in '58. This was the last film he made before he went in the Army. And about a year later, while he was still in the Army, Paramount decided to reissue the movie, and they come out with a second poster, and this is the reissue one here.
Now
So-
that was, you told me years ago that the King Creole one sheet was one of the hardest to find that there was. And it was the highest price at that time.
Right. Any of the first 4 movies are hard to find, generally.
And now have the one sheet, have these gone up, Ted, since I got mine years ago?
Yes, sir.
They
Yes,
have
sir.
gone up.
Yes, they have. Now, we'll say this, his movie stuff has not yet seen its day. As far as the better days is yet to come. But he's entering that age group where it's been 50, 60 years since these movies were put out. And it seems like in the collecting of movie posters, there's a gap in time, and then all of a sudden this thing gets hot. So I don't think he's seen his day yet. But
What is the biggest thing that they're collecting now? Is records or the records? What is the main thing that they're collecting today that's really sought after?
It covers. It just depends on what your interest
you like.
is.
Okay.
Now a lot of the movie stuff, when he first died, the first 10 or 15 years, everything was records. And you'd go into a convention, and the dealers would have tables of this movie stuff. Well, I was interested in all of it, so I was picking this up for nothing. And but the movie stuff, there's just so many made for each movie, and that's it. And most of them have been destroyed over the years.
Well, Ted, I'd like to thank you for coming over so much and sharing with Anderson
appreciate
County Conversation and the folks. Your museum, basically, that's what it is. He's a collector for, I guess now, 40-something years, I guess. It's a long time.
Right.
And tell the folks out there if they would like to come take a tour, you give tours through it, give them your email address if you don't mind so they can get a hold of you.
Okay. All you got to do is just use email address of coltsfan0024@gmail.com.
And thank you again, Ted. And from
Yes, sir.
one Elvis lover to another,
Why, yeah.
we certainly appreciate it. And folks, Elvis has left the building.